that is really, I like it. So they took over all these industrial buildings, they turned it into apartments. And so basically they would give it to a person that comes to the building and says, I'm homeless. So they would give them that apartment, they would get them a caseworker, assign them something. Because a lot of the times people have been homeless for a very long time and we need to break that cycle. So how do we um, back on their feet? How do we get them to believe in themselves, to have confidence that they can do something, that they can be the artist they want to be, that they could be the engineer that they want to be, or the teacher that they want to be? So, so addressing education. So they have like literally everything in one building. So
Do they have childcare?
and they do have childcare, and that's where I came into the picture. So I ran an after school program, which actually dealt as a childcare system. So, um, so, and that is important too, because a lot of parents, they want to get back on their feet, but they have kids, and they're like, okay, how do I juggle both? And I have two kids of my own, so I understand that. But I love that system. It was great. It had structure for people. It had food. They didn't have to worry about food. A meal was cooked every night. They just had to worry about lunch and breakfast, but there was like a whole kitchen set up so people could go and make their own breakfast, their own lunch. And it just gets them used to having a routine, a structure, how to get back to society, basically. And because the homeless community, it's a community within its own, it's a society within its own. And that's something that we fail to understand. There are rules, there are culture, all kinds of things that happen once you become homeless, that you start learning. And I'm not saying it's bad, but if we want people to integrate back to society, we want to get them back on their feet. Like we have to do better at facilitating. The same thing with the drug crisis. We lost more people in the city of Laconia than anywhere else in the country per capita, when it comes to the drug crisis. I know at least 15 people that died my age from heroin overdose.
That's really sad. I'm sorry that because that affects everybody around you too, and not just
Yeah.
the people who pass away.
One of the people that I took under my wing, his name is Joey. He passed away. He was actually a little bit younger than me. He was 25. I got him a job. I was bringing him to work, like giving him food, like just getting him on his feet and trying to be a good role model and show him that young people can do great things. And we got to a point that it was too late. But it's again offering people a one-stop shop type of thing, not having to jump through all the hoops. So right now, if somebody wants to get out of homelessness, what we have set up in society is you have to go to the welfare office, get welfare. Then you have to go to another office to get health insurance. Then you're going to another office for housing. And then you're on a waiting list. And if it is an emergency because you have kids and they might up you up a little bit, but you still have to wait. So you're still stuck in a bad situation. So if you came from domestic violence, you're going back to domestic violence. Like if you're in drugs, you're going back to drugs because like it's easier to live that lifestyle than it is to jump through all these hoops. So
I would like to chime in a little bit. So I actually ended up in a women's shelter back in December. Okay, so I got to see firsthand like a lot of I got poked to be tested for TB, and the way we do the shelters now are not very catering to a successful transition, but even so, like the caseworkers are, working on a lot of things. Like I have some friends that were there when I was there, but now they're in like hotels, right? But the problem is like there's no childcare, and one of my friends has a kid that I'm pretty sure is on the spectrum, right? And that was the thing too. A lot of the kids in the shelter were traumatized, right? Their parents are yelling at them, screaming at them. Parents don't know what to do. They're too exhausted. And or, maybe they're going to use their coping mechanism soon in order to handle their situation, right? But like there's no place to charge your cell phone, and your cell phone, if it's free, it's going to die quickly anyway, right? And it's really hard to use even for trying to find a job or anything, right? But like, quality matters, I think, when you're in a situation like that, so you can get out of it quicker. But like what I thought or what I saw to like These people need like lockers to put their stuff so they don't have to carry it around all the time. They couldn't give you any medicine, right? But if you had a friend who had Benadryl, that could help. Because like what happened was there was a random storm in San Diego where it was raining and all these women got drenched, right? But their clothes have been carrying pores of sorts, right? And everybody had an allergy attack. I just happened to recognize mine, right? But like mold was growing, and then everybody's complaining about smell. Like these are things they don't realize like are a big deal.
Yeah.
And they're so small and so subtle and so overlooked. I think it sounds like what you guys are doing is much more autonomous. There's still help, but there's a lot more resources. But like the thing too, though, is they don't always get along, right? There's people stealing from each other because like that's the way they've been managing, right?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I want to take away, this is why I loved Andrew Yang. He talked a lot about humanity. He talked about a lot about how we treat each other. And it's not just how we treat each other in a conversation. I think he meant more than that. It's how we treat each other when we're at work, when we service people, when we think about them, not just as a customer, but as a human being, like a brother or sister, as we would call it in the movement. So what I want to change in homelessness and how do we address homelessness is not how we, right now, the way you're describing it and the way we do homelessness is like a fast food process. We get them into a room, everybody's in the room, everybody's safe, everybody's eating great, good. We did the bare minimum. The next day they're out, they go about their day, and then they come back. That's
it's kind of like triage, if you will.
Yeah, it's very much like that. So to me, that's not what I want. I want a long-term picture. I want it to be home. I want it to be family. So instead of packing everybody into a gym or to like a big giant space and beds everywhere, which is the typical shelter in America, I want it to be an individual apartment where it's their apartment, where it's an individualized case, because not all homelessness is the same. As you know, some people might come. There's domestic violence in the LGBTQ community. There's hate crimes. Like, I wouldn't address it the same way that you would address a woman, a mom, or any other issue. So I want to change that, and we can code that in the law. And that's one thing. I don't know when we as Americans we stop believing that we can decide what the future looks like and what society should look like. For some reason, we started believing that it needs to be more bland, more broad, more. No, we can specifically say what we want our society to look like, and that's the difference between us and some other great countries. Other great countries are not afraid to define what their society is going to look like. That's why we look up to them. Our best politicians, Andrew Yang, Bernie Sanders, and some of the other politicians, they're quoting other countries, but it's because those countries are not afraid. And partially, they're not afraid because they're so small that they don't have a lot to lose. So they're like, what the hell? Let's try this. And they've tried it and they're successful. Portugal, they have the lowest drug use in the world, and they legalize a single drug.
I think it's because like we have this bureaucracy that's so stuck in this old-fashioned nonsense. We're literally living in the past. Like Andrew Yang said, we have a gerontocracy. Like the people we have in like the White House and in DC, they grew up on like what, Windows 95? I remember when I was like, 4 years old, I was using Windows 95. And they're not even in like the Windows 95 mindset. They're all the way back in like, back in my day. And, you're like Joe said, like work is more than a paycheck and this and that. When all these jobs are getting automated, it's like we got to start living in the now, not in the 50, 60 years past. It's ridiculous.
Well, I think you hit right on the nail. We in this country, all you have to do is visit Washington, D.C., which I've had the pleasure to work in Washington, D.C. All you have to do is visit Washington, D.C. to understand what we idolize as a country. And idolization is a problem. It's a huge problem. That's how Rome fell apart. That's how Egypt fell apart. They idolized pharaohs. And so we need to learn from our history. we in this country idolize the 1800s and the 1700s. We see it as some glorious golden age when it really
sucked.
It was.
Well, okay. Can I also just point out the younger generation? Well, okay, you could look, and it's really hard to find a voter under 35. You know, but you go up to 40, you got a few more, 45, a few more, right? Okay, so why is there an entire generation or two that doesn't vote? Well, it's because we're stressed out, we're overworked, we never took the time to learn any of the politics. No one took the time to teach us the politics. Or, you know, there was so much stress and trauma driven behavior that like it just was not important, right? And so now the only ones working on anything are the ones that have been around doing it because they feel like experts. They know what they're doing. They understand the game, you know, and so they're like, well, I guess if I know what I'm doing, I will be able to help keep the trajectory going the way it is, because it doesn't need to evolve. But the thing is, when it comes to learning anything, you know, it takes active work to learn new things, you know. And if we have 80-year-olds running for president, they might not even have taken the time to learn these new things, right? But I think there should be a test for anybody who's running for president or anything to go through our homeless like process, right? If they could like manage to go into the homeless shelter and successfully, you know, you can see the problems when you go undercover boss, right? And yeah. I think more politicians in our society should be able to do the undercover boss, if you will, because then they would see the problem at the root source. But they're so disconnected sometimes, right? Because, you know, I'm pretty sure Trump doesn't know what it's like for, you know, Chael or Faye here, or, you know, like he doesn't get it, right? He's never had to, and
the guy knows the problem. Spoon, luckily, so.
Yeah, despite us both being New Yorkers, I don't think Trump really gets me. I never felt the empathize. But sorry, go on.
This scared my life. Like, even so, the Washington Post, which earlier on one of your colleagues was quoting. This is why I decided to allow this reporter to like report on literally everything about my life, the good, the bad. Like, he dug into everything. He spoke to every person that knew me in the city in he called people in Puerto Rico that I didn't know were still alive. And I wanted him
to. You got the full treatment, huh?
Well, I wanted people to hopefully be inspired by this nobody in Laconia to wake up. Like, we have so much, literally just one of you guys standing up and running for office can completely change everything, because that's how little involvement there is in our democracy. I come from Puerto Rico, where 78% of Puerto Ricans vote in their elections. Do you imagine if that happened here? The Bidens, the Donald Trumps would not exist. They just wouldn't. That said, I will give Puerto Rico some criticism. Puerto Rico does have some serious corruption that needs to be addressed.
That's what I was about to say. I'm not sure if it's
all about hitting the cards as they are. So, and that's why sometimes I can be a controversial figure, because I did criticize presidential candidates as they came through New Hampshire and as they visited me. And they're like, that's kind of like crazy. You're hosting them and then you're criticizing them as they weren't great. And I was like, because I believe that it is our job to.
Well, isn't that the job interview process? That's ridiculous. It's like, oh, you're interviewing a job applicant and you see that they like, you know, broke down somebody else's business and you're criticizing them. Well, of course I am.
If you go to a restaurant to eat or anywhere to eat and you're not happy with the service, you might go and write a bad review. And if you were happy, you might write a good review. Like, that is life. Like, it is okay.
But why do they deserve special treatment? I don't understand. It's like, you want the job, so you have to me, show it was that you're capable.
And also, I think the point is that if you don't write a review,
I made some enemies as I went.
Right, but supposing you don't say anything about the things that you are critical of, and you just host, then you've missed your opportunity to have any influence over this process. Why wouldn't you want to let people know, right?
I agree. Sorry, I got blacked out for a second. My phone will tell me how long I've been on social media occasionally. So if I'm more than 2 hours, it says, Carlos, you need to cut off. And I do that judgment. I think it's important. You need to have a healthy life. I like jogging and going outside too. But yeah, so I did that throughout, and you could. I encourage you guys all to read the. I was as blunt as they come. I was, because none of them pay my bills. None of them are doing anything to advance my life. So like, I'm okay with giving criticism if it's deserved. There were some candidates that came here that acted entitled, and I don't believe in that. I that's why I getting from the beginning.
Yeah, I think you just hit the nail on the head there, buddy. We should not be treating politicians like celebrities. Right? It's like everybody wants to get like a picture with them and jump up and down with them and get inspired by them. But does that say that they could do the job or not do the job? I mean, Barack Obama was treated like a Hollywood celebrity. Sure, he gave like big speeches and like razzle dazzled and like hope and change. But then when it came down to it, like on the policy level, then why would we get Trump? You know? But
honestly, people who are outspoken like you and like Ariel and Carlos and other people who are actually speaking up to the process, that's something that I think politicians should be really thankful for. I mean, if you want that honesty, and so you understand what people are thinking, because if somebody doesn't like you, they're just not going to vote for you. But if they don't tell you, how will you ever earn that vote, right?
Yeah, but I'm so tired of politicians being treated like celebrities at the presidential level. It's just vomit inducing.
But Ariel, how many times have we fanboyed out on Andrew Yang ourselves? It's actually something we have to fight against. But it's within ourselves.
We'll know that he's actually there to fix the problem. Well, I mean, I personally don't like fanboy too much. It's like I want these problems to get solved. I don't care anymore. At first, it's fun to kind of jump up and down at the rallies and like repeat his name 500 times. But after that, I'm like, okay, just become president and get these things solved. Like, I'm done fanboying.
But most people only get like 5 minutes. They don't get like any amount of time like Carlos does with people.
Like, I want to see things get done. I want to see the change, not just.
What I mean is, like, if you get that 5 minutes with Andrew Yang or with somebody that you idolize, all of a sudden,
it's nice, but
you can't even think, in those 5 minutes, you can't even think of the criticism that you might have wanted to bring up.
But after 5 minutes, after like a day, it's kind of like, okay, you're a human being again,
So this is my take on this. I am not against having human feelings. I am not against you having a human experience, which I know to some people Marianne Williamson sounded crazy, but I really like the fact that she was trying to bring, why do we believe in religion? Why do we believe in all these things as humanity? It's because it's our human experience. It's our culture. It's who we are. And I'm not against any of that. There was times that I was so excited to call Andrew Yang a friend, and like I felt, there was a cool thing. And Bernie Sanders and some other people. I'm not against being a fan of somebody. I actually think musicians deserve less fanaticism than some people in politics that are actually trying to change things in the world and they get no credit at all whatsoever. So I'm not against any of that. I believe in culture. I believe in building community, building. This is how we take power. So I'm not. There's nothing wrong with that. What there is wrong with is building an imagery of somebody that is not real. So, for example, Barack Obama, like I give him credit. He was the first Black president of our country. He did, for me, he signed on to the marriage equality amicus letter to the Supreme Court, which it was powerful. I believe that it persuaded Justice Roberts. So I'm okay with giving people credit and celebrating them, but I'm not okay with building an image more than what it is. And so we in politics tend to do that sometimes. So for example, with Barack Obama, we hail him as some liberal hero that he wasn't. As a matter of fact, I did vote for Obama and I did work for Obama here on the ground, but I idolize him because he wasn't the liberal hero that I thought he was going to be. He praised Bernie Sanders on the campaign trail many times, and then he fell short when it was like standing up against war and the drone attack. Just because we didn't
sabotage Sanders' campaign. Pretty much, he was the guy who put that fateful phone call in, right?
Well, yeah, I'm 2008. That's not even what he did this past time around.
Yeah.
And I can't attest to that because I wasn't in those circles, but according to media, that's what happened. To be honest, Biden he was literally nowhere near my radar. I did host him. I was happy to. I did congratulate him as a vice president. I thought he was an okay vice president, but he was in my top even 10. That said, I'm not okay with like making idols of these people that don't deserve it. Like we tend to look where there is none. And so, like right now, the party's busy trying to like make Biden into something that he's not. I rather you guys tell me like, hey, this is who he is. This is what we're going to get from him. And that's fine. This is what we have. We'll move forward from here. But to idolize him and create something that he isn't is just wrong, and Republicans are using it. I just got a mailer yesterday from Republicans saying he's a socialist, all this stuff. And I was like, I wish he was. Like,
we're all saying that. How is that not affecting the advertising?
The
right?
RNC,
the response is in
now.
Like anyone plugged into politics has heard 16 or 17 real progressive responses to the attack on Biden, framing him as something we wish he was. It's comedy, right? So how is it that the people that those ads are targeted at don't hear the response to the ads? I guess they just don't watch those social media platforms. What seems ubiquitous to me in my world is just not, because our experiences are so bizarrely personalized today. It's something we haven't caught up with culturally,
Yeah, I agree. So those are my experiences when it comes to that. But I'm completely okay with the yanggang celebrating. I have my hat. This was given to me by Zach, the campaign manager. So I will always treasure that. And I have his book, and I'm a fan to a degree. So I think we all just need to learn how to check each other. That said, there is power in that. Not everybody's like us. And what I mean by that, there's a lot of people in society that are not awakened as to how to see politics. So we have to use the system in place that these corrupt politicians have been using for a long time, whether it's creating a fan base, whether it's creating the excitement and the concert-like atmosphere to attract these people, to hopefully awaken them into politics and show them like this is how we need to do things for the better good of humanity.
So, Carlos, to change the topic quite a bit, I'd like to find out more about your experience coming to the United States. As you're not an immigrant per se, but it's sort of like you're an American citizen, sort of. But then, what's different about being Puerto Rican and not fully? Yeah.
So I've had so I'm part of immigration groups here in the Northeast, and we've always had this discussion. Obviously, as a Puerto Rican, I have privilege that many Latinos don't have, which is we're born in U.S. territory. That said, I consider myself an immigrant because we have to struggle similar, not the same. And I'm not trying to downplay other immigrant stories, but we go through similar struggles. The fact that we have to learn English when we come to mainland, that is a huge psychological struggle for many. It causes depression, suicide to some people too. So the culture, the food. I remember my biggest struggles, and you guys might laugh at this, but the biggest struggle was going into a grocery store. And I remember being 12 years old and not having my favorite candy at the grocery aisle, the candy aisle. Like, as a 12-year-old, I mean, I know that like some 12-year-olds care about games and other stuff, but to me, like, I'm a candy guy. So I was like, I remember I had to get used to this new flavor, this new candy. And like, I'll never forget that experience. Then going to school was even worse. So I was used to going to school in Puerto Rico and having a uniform and having Puerto Rican food, which is way different from American food. And we were able to listen to our music, and like it was just a whole different experience. So then you go to school here, it's an enclosed building. Keep in mind, schools in Puerto Rico are an open concept. So really, you're technically outside. they're buildings that are not enclosed, so you're not inside all the time. So to me, I felt claustrophobic. I remember going to Black Rock Academy, which, by the way, if you Google it, has been shut down because so many discrimination lawsuits that happened with that public school in New York. And it was an all-Black school. There was a Latino wing in the school for 7th, 8th grade. And I remember like feeling so enclosed in the building. So I felt so behind. I felt alien. I felt really much like I didn't belong at first. And then you had to make friends. And then all Latinos would just kind of like group together because there was like 20 of us. And then the rest of the school was Black. And for us, that was a cultural shock because the way New York was handling it, or that school was handling it, it's like we were different. And so I grew up in Puerto Rico, where if you were Black, white, like we were all Puerto Rican. Like there was no different. What was different about us was the music we liked, the colors we liked, the food we liked, the candy we liked. But it was cultural things. It was not racial things. And so that's when my eyes got open to that experience that I'm like, oh my God, like I saw the injustices happening to our Black brothers and sisters. But at the same time, I was like, I don't know that I can deal with this much longer. I would come home crying, and I'm like, Mom, I don't even want to go to the bathroom. I don't feel comfortable. And everything was so divisive. The food was terrible. I remember going and having breakfast, and the breakfast was cereal, cornflakes, or these French toast. There were sticks that looked like fish fries. They tasted like fish fries. So imagine having that for breakfast when you're used to having Puerto Rican breakfast, which I won't even go into details. I was like,
and why not?
so I was like, I felt like an immigrant. And then I remember we were less than in my community. We had to go to like a separate church that had service whenever. It wasn't consistent. That's where we go to the food pantry. And I grew up poor in Puerto Rico. I grew up in a shanty village, which dirt floors. But I tell you what, compared to the experience I had in Buffalo, New York, I was rich in Puerto Rico. Like I might have not had the best bed, but my family owned the house. Like they didn't have to pay taxes for that property. Like this is something that America does backwards too. We value freedom, I guess, to a degree, but the food was always consistently delicious. And like I felt like here we had to like when we first started here, we had to like have stale bread. Like just it was poverty on a whole different level, and it was humiliating. And think about this. This is a 12-year-old living that experience. And I'll never forget that memory. So when my mom finally decided to leave Buffalo, New York for Massachusetts, it was a huge relief because I was like, maybe this Massachusetts place that I hear about will be much better. And at the time I was starting to think about like who I was, which being gay. So I was in the closet, and I had heard that Massachusetts was like that frontier for gay people to come out and like be themselves. And Massachusetts was like Boston and San Francisco have always been the gay capital of America, I always felt. When it comes to a safe haven. And so I was just looking so much forward to getting out of there and like going to Massachusetts. When we went to Massachusetts, life was better, but that's because we had already established ourselves after 4 years. But that was the struggle. So that's something that immigrants face here in America. So when we talk about immigration, it's not just about a documented status. It's about a life change. It's about like the struggle of being different, being an alien to this country. And so it's just the holidays were different.
Did you have siblings?
Yeah.
Did you have siblings?
Yeah, I have 2 younger brothers. People say my middle brother looks older than me, and I take pride in that. So I keep myself looking young, I guess.
Lotion, huh?
Gosh, he works painting cars. He had it the toughest coming here. He like went into severe depression. He tried to commit suicide a couple of times. We had to face that as a family, and the lack of resources in the community and the discrimination. Like if you didn't speak English, your appointment, you were going to get it for counseling or whatever you needed whenever they decided that it was okay for them. Like, so, that's stuff that we grew up with. And then my little brother, Jose. So we call him the white guy out of all the relatives because if you looked at him, there's not many Puerto Rican features, and he grew up here. When we moved to the United States, he was a baby. So, and when I say United States, I mean mainland. So he speaks very little Spanish, and he's okay with cornflakes for breakfast. He's okay with pizza for lunch, hamburger for dinner. And I'm not putting our culture, American culture, down, but I love our food. So I criticize him all the time for that. But yeah, so those are my brothers. And I do have a brother also named Carlos that lives in Puerto Rico. That's through my father, and he still
Is your
lives.
father's name also Carlos?
Yeah, so I am the 13th Carlos in a generational. So my name is passed down family to family. You can track my full name, Carlos Enrique Cardona, all the way to Spain, Cardona, Spain. So
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
That was
wanted
like
to find
two-thirds
out a
of my
little bit
diet
more.
are pizza and hamburgers. Sorry, go on, you.
It's okay.
I'm
Criticized
from New
diet.
York. Yeah. So that's what I eat. True, just exactly like what you said. Go on.
And
So-
French that look like
It's not wrong to call you an immigrant, even though you're an American at this point, because that's what it feels like. It is an immigrant experience. But I was wondering also about the legal aspects of having been born in Puerto Rico instead of here on the mainland. Like, you wouldn't be able to vote for president if you were residing in Puerto Rico, but here you are in New Hampshire, and you can vote now for all of the candidates, including U.S. president.
So I'm glad you bring that up because I love
Yeah.
educating. There's a great
Yeah.
organization called powerforpuertorico.com. You can search that up, and they have tons of information. They can tell you how many Puerto Ricans live in your state. And in some cases, they can even tell you how many live in your city. So it's good for politics to find out what your votes look like. So in New Hampshire, for example, we have 46,000 Hispanics, and we have 15,000 Puerto Ricans, which is the population of my city. So that's pretty cool for me to know out of 1 million residents in the state. So those are some fun facts. But Puerto Rico is a Commonwealth colony. I call it a colony, even though the United States has never used the word to describe Puerto Rico, because it's exactly what it is. So the United States serves as a protectorate. Basically, it's like having a child. You take care of it, and they have no rights. You get to tell them exactly, well, I mean, kids do have rights, but you get my point here. Like you as a parent, you're telling them how to live their life, what to do. Puerto Rico does have some sort of autonomy that is really weird that for some reason, I don't know why Puerto Ricans still try to protect it, fight for it. Because for me, it's we should either be fighting for statehood or for independence. We should be able to dictate our own future. But they do have some sort of autonomy where they can create their own constitution. But the history of Puerto Rico, real quick, in the early 1900s, during the Spanish-American War, the United States just simply invaded. About over 300 Puerto Ricans died. 300 Puerto Ricans died, innocent Puerto Ricans, and then about 3,000 serving soldiers. There was a massacre called the Ponce Massacre, which about 50 innocent children died during a raid that the United States did. So it's important to know this history because it's not much different than the current history we have with some of the invasions we do around the world. And this describes my stance as a politician. But Puerto Rico does not have the right to vote. They're automatic citizens, but as a colony does not have a right to vote for president, for representation. So therefore, Puerto Ricans in the island don't get to vote. But because there is no definition of class of citizens in the United States, once you come to mainland, you automatically become a regular citizen, so you're able to vote. What happens? This is I know, and it's confusing and crazy, and if you have questions, just ask me. But this is the other confusing. So 2016, Puerto Rican birth certificates were completely in Spanish. And so a law was passed, which Republicans injected a little bit of hate into that bill for Puerto Ricans. They said, we're going to change their birth certificate, and it's going to be in English. And we're allowed Spanish translation in small letters at the bottom, like what it's saying in Spanish. So about 50% of the population doesn't understand or speak English. So you can imagine having an English birth certificate. You just know that's your name and the date that you were born, but you don't know what it actually says on your birth certificate besides your name and the numbers. So as of 2016, our birth certificates were changed. So a lot of us in mainland had to go back to the island to renew our birth certificates to get the new one because our old ones were not valid anymore. The government completely invalidated them. So you're talking about 8 million Puerto Ricans flying to the island in 1 year, not including on top of the tourists that go there, that are millions and millions, flooding the island just to renew their birth certificates because otherwise we would have no way to get an ID in the United States because one of the ways
And
you can get an ID or with a
they
birth
couldn't
certificate.
just mail it to you. You have to actually physically go there. It's crazy.
No.
It's like
And
when
then
I had my son was born in Taiwan, and you have to physically be in Taiwan at the consulate to get his birth certificate if you want one that says he's born, outside of the country as a U.S. citizen. So it's very
well,
strange. Yeah.
that's exactly what happened to us. We had to fly there. And I remember my mom, me, my brothers. I mean, it was a whole family affair flying to Puerto Rico. Like, and being at the airport, it was so chaotic because, like, I mean, you can picture the scenario. So, the other fun fact, so about 6 million Puerto Ricans lived in the island prior to Hurricane Maria. Only 3 million currently live in the island. So
Oh
about
my goodness. Wow.
the island after Hurricane Maria. About 3,900 Puerto Ricans lost their lives during Hurricane Maria. Donald Trump says only 49 died. I can tell you that it's definitely not 49. When I went to Hurricane Maria, when I went to Puerto Rico right after the math of Hurricane Maria, it looked like the apocalypse had happened. There's no other way to describe it. Every single palm tree that you can imagine was down on the floor, like a nuclear bomb had gone off.
And would
People-
you say that disproportionately wealthy people fled? That the people who actually left as refugees, would they be more wealthy because they had a chance to?
The first wave of Puerto Ricans that left, I like to think that it was the more affluent. But then let's say after this, the two millions that left afterwards, it was two waves that happened. It was called the Puerto Rican Exodus. The first million, I would say probably most of them were wealthy Puerto Ricans, which there's not a lot of in the island. Puerto Rico, if it was a state, would be the poorest state in the nation, poorer than Mississippi. So that gives you an idea of the poverty, what it looks like in Puerto Rico. So when all those Puerto Ricans left, then the second wave was mostly people who had relatives here. So I had 6 relatives move up here with me that I had begged them to leave the island. And actually, so there's 2 parts to the Puerto Rico story for me with Hurricane Maria. My dad spent 9 months in the ICU with a bacteria that we can easily cure here in mainland that you can contract from bad water. When rats piss on water or something, my dad must have drank from a river and rats must have been near there. And anyway, so he contracted that bacteria. So he was unconscious for months. They didn't have antibiotic. They didn't have the most normal things that we have here, like penicillin, like simple things. So I had begged literally my whole entire family. I said, I don't care. We have to sleep on the floor here, like whatever it takes. I mean, you're already worst case scenario there. I had an uncle committed suicide because he had no food for 2 weeks and he was tired of watching his wife, my aunt, and his daughter starving, literally starving, and they were eating leaves, and bark from trees. That's stuff that you hear about in movies from, like, I don't know, wars in Uganda or something like that, like very stereotypical, right? But that's really what the reality on the island was like.
And this is
no showers.
America. I have
Yeah,
to
it's
say
not
That's
Puerto Rico
strange.
is
There are
America.
lots of parts of America that are just as dire and just as much poverty. Like Flint, Michigan still has no water. That's not surprising at all.
Yeah, that's why I'm in my rural community. So I'll release fun event that is happening. So October 15th, Andrew Yang are going to have a national event. So you guys are the first ones to know about this. We'll be releasing more details this week. And we're going to be addressing rural America, which is where I'm from here. My area, even though it's a city, is very rural. And we have very real needs, just like any rural community in America. And that's why Donald Trump won. The reality is Democrats have failed to address rural communities. They've failed to, what I call average Joes. They just forgot about them and ignore them. And that's why I made it my job to like highlight rural communities during the presidential process.
Like
So
you hosted like 6 of your family
Is
members in the same
is
home
that
that you've been hosting all these presidential candidates.
oh yeah.
is that why you think you won the your area, because you were a Democrat that actually cared about, in a conservative area, you kind of won as a Democrat, or it was other Democrats?
I'm not, funny enough, like people on social media knows me as this chairman of the Laconia Democratic Party, but like around here, I don't even talk about that. I don't talk about being a Democrat. I talk about, and this is why Andrew Yang and I get along so well. We don't talk about, we just talk about being people. Like I had a neighbor yesterday while I was on the phone with a couple of different politicians that stopped me and they were like, hi, like, and I was like, oh, hey. And so I let go of the phone call. I was like, oh, I have a neighbor stopping by. It's more important to talk to them. So I was talking to them. They're like, we just bought the house down the street. And I heard people were saying we should talk to you because you like politics. We like politics too. They don't know, half of the people don't know my, I guess, whatever status I have on social media, like they just know me as their neighbor down the street that is putting Laconia on the map. That's all they know. And the issues that I like fight for, like they don't have some sort of fandom, some sort of idolization of me, or it's just they know me as Carlos that just knows how to network with people and find solutions for our community. If somebody's, I don't know. So we
Well,
had.
you've won your primary. Are you running unopposed, or do you have an opponent for the
I
general?
do have opponents for the general. So all very credible opponents. They're all Trump supported opponents. Trump has targeted my district. So this is going to be a tough race. Donald Trump.
The race is still on, Ariel. We've got to continue supporting Mr. Cardona here.
By 40% in 2016. WMUR, our local news, is reporting that Donald Trump will win this district by 6%. That's not the Democratic Party doing that work. I believe that that's the work I've done on the ground to change what it's going to look like for Donald Trump. Because the job that I've been trying to do is to show people that we don't need to belong to a party to accomplish things. We just have to put humanity first. And I hate to keep saying that because that's very much what Andrew Yang says, but it's the truth. We need to just put our neighbors first. If there's a fire down the street, we need to worry about where they're going to sleep. If they have kids, if they can continue life, how do we help them continue life? How do we make sure that they continue to be successful and not end up homeless? So that's my whole goal, and that's what I've been doing. So that's the difference. So there's been a couple of articles that have come out on me that have highlighted me as a bipartisan support candidate that has been rallying unity in the city. Because it's us against the world, the way I'm painting it. And it very much is. We have politicians that want to keep us in poverty. When the stock market shut down, you saw politicians cashing their checks. They knew that the stock market was going to crash. They didn't tell you, they didn't tell me that. And we got screwed, but they made money out of that. In 2008, the same thing. They made money out of that. They didn't lose any. So we just have to turn the tables around and get power back to us. So that's what I've been doing. I did win in 2007 this district. Again, I ran as a write-in candidate, and I think that was a huge plus for me because Democrats like here are frowned upon. So I think that was a huge plus. And then when I came out as a Democrat, people were like, okay, well, he's different. But as the years have gone by and I have supported Obama in public, I believe that locally, maybe with Republicans, it has infuriated them that I have become a little bit partisan. And the reason I became partisan is because I believe that the Republican Party, when it comes to gay rights, when it comes to women's rights, to children, to families, to working families, unions, they're completely wrong. And then exactly what they did to Puerto Rico, that they have failed to recognize that Puerto Rico even exists. I mean, they did that to any nation, to any minority in the world. We would have a war in our hands. And so we've treated Puerto Rico like it's a rag doll that we just don't care about. We just throw in the corner and we use it whenever we want.
So I have a specific question about Puerto Rican legal status and stuff. Okay. Now, if a Puerto Rican here in the United States were to marry somebody who is from outside of the country, So maybe they marry someone who's Mexican or Canadian or something else. And are they able to help that person become American citizens also?
Yes. Yep. So we're about a half an hour away from Dominican Republic, which you will see a lot of Dominican Republic and Puerto Rican marriages, Dominican and Puerto Rican marriages, and that's not uncommon. Where I grew up in the island is the West Coast, so we're the closest to Dominican Republic. And it was not uncommon to see Dominicans that had moved to the island because they married and they become U.S. citizens. Yes, it happens all the time. I know people from all kinds of countries that have married Puerto Ricans. They fall in love, and life, continues here in America. So, but yes, your answer is yeah. So we have those rights. It's just so in the early 1900s, not that American Congress has changed much. Racism was still pretty much relevant. So what the United States did, instead of creating a revolt in Puerto Rico, 1 million people revolting is not a good look for America after the Spanish-American War. So what they did is they give them crumbs. They said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to give you guys citizenship. You want our jobs. Great. You become citizen. You can come and go as you please from the island. You can get an American passport. You can pretty much call yourself an American, but you're an American light. We won't give you power. We're just going to give you dependency. And that's exactly what happened. Puerto Rico became dependent on the U.S. economy. So basically, we exploited Puerto Rico for economic reasons, for their people, for the military strategy. The Enola Gay, before it went to Hiroshima, it landed in Puerto Rico to fuel. So, one of the most strategic military bases in the world happens to be in Puerto Rico, in my hometown of Aguadilla, the Ramey base, which is now an airport / military base. So that's kind of what the United States did. They say, here's some crumbs. We're going to let you come to the island. We're going to let you pretend to be an American, but we're not going to let you vote because we know that if you vote, that's why Congress is afraid of Puerto Rico becoming a state.
But there does seem to be some special designation that somehow lets them know that if you are if I go as an American citizen to Puerto Rico and I reside there, can I still vote for president, or is it my residency there prevents me?
It prevents you from being there, from voting in.
So I suddenly become a Puerto Rican if I go to Puerto Rico and live there, immediately, and now my voting rights are curtailed.
So the wealthy, this is how they get away with it, because I know quite a few. I actually interviewed with somebody who is an American, who has residency in Michigan, but lives in the island. So if you have residency in any state, then, the law in that state defines that you're a resident of that state, then you're a resident of that state, so you're able to vote in that state. So you're not allowed to vote in the local Puerto Rico elections, but you can vote in absentee in Michigan, or go and show up and vote and then come back.
And if I move to Guam, do I become Guamanian immediately, and then I can Guam?
Guam is the same for Virgin Islands. It's the same for the Mariana Trenches. We own more than just these colonies. There's 7 of them. But America has failed to teach their students that there's such thing as these colonies. So, but yeah, now it's the same thing. You can for president. That said, you do get in primary.
But here's I think that's the same thing with the United States and what it does to people who are struggling with money. It's we just won't give you this freedom dividend or this UBI to do what you want. But if you jump through all of our hoops, you're kind of what's the word I'm looking, participating in the economy light, kind of like an American light. I think all these means tested programs are participating in the economy light because we'll give you SNAP and all this stuff, but not just straight that other people do.
No. So one of the I'm grabbing my charger, so sorry if I'm moving around. I realize my phone for some reason is at 3%. But one of the things that I often talk in politics, which I have learned from Senator Bernie Sanders, is that slavery didn't get abolished. It just got reinvented. It got changed. So slavery is still very much alive. We just change what, instead of being just Black people, well, we're going to use Black people, Hispanics, Asians, and poor people. We're going to just all keep them in economic slavery. So it's no different. And in some places, it's still driven by race. Redlining districts are still very much alive in America. I remember Samelis Lopez, who's running for Congress in Brooklyn. She was talking about redlining districts and what it does to communities. So, slavery is still very much alive.
And I read in an article from your local paper in Laconia that you had sort of a social media sort of fight with one of your opponents in the last race, but you were had made up afterwards. But the thing that started it was that you had tweeted that you might quit politics because you were exhausted dealing with racism in this state and the lack of understanding from people that say they are allies. Being Latino has been a bigger challenge than being gay here in New Hampshire. Do you still find that to be true?
Absolutely. Being gay has its struggles, and I'm not trying to say it's easy. But in so many ways, I call it the gay privilege. Just like being white, there's a privilege to it. I feel like with being gay nowadays, and I'm not saying everywhere, I know I'm going to get wrath for this, but some people find it, oh, you're gay, cool. That's been some of the reactions I get. Like, oh, I want to learn more about you, like a curiosity. Like, now I tell them
counterculture cred in some circles. That's a real thing. Yeah, no doubt
yeah.
about it.
So I think movies are starting to fantasize gay people and like culture, like we're some sort of like special human being, and we're not more special than you guys if you're heterosexual, or Hispanic or Asian or whatever background you come from. I don't believe in making anything more special, because it's not. We're just like anybody else. We have feelings, the whole 9 yards. Obviously, I don't need to go into detail. But being Hispanic, you speak Spanish around here, anywhere, and you'll have heads turning around. And it wasn't the case when I first moved here. I want to clarify that. I do believe that Donald Trump has heightened, kind of like the same thing what happened after 9/11, considering today's 9/11. Like when 9/11 happened, a lot of people were fearful of Muslims, and they felt like if they saw somebody with a hijabi, they just like automatically there was a fear. And I think Donald Trump has done the same thing. You speak Spanish and automatically we're all Mexican. We're all, as he described Latinos or Mexicans, rapists, criminals. And so there's that automatic fear that some people have. Like, are you here to steal from me? Are you here to like take my job? Are you here to like jump me? Are you here to like commit some sort of crime? And you can see that in people's faces. And I have battled nonstop for the past 4 years, and I was very successful. There was a very ignorant, hateful politician. His name is Peter, that tried to run for mayor here in the city. And he was my opponent in 2018, and I got to witness firsthand, just how terrible of a leader he is. And I was so fearful because I got one day a mailer that said, if you want immigrants to steal your job, steal your wife, it had a bunch of ridiculous stuff. And I woke up afraid for my family. I was like, oh my God, like some white crazy person with a gun coming to my house, knowing how much recognition I have as a Latino, as a successful Latino in politics. Is this person going to come here and make an example? So, that's a real fear in my community. So when I declared to run, I was hesitant because, one, fear was being used, and two, Donald Trump's hatred would play in my district. And I mean, nobody wants to run for politics to lose. Like, that's not your intention. So, and I didn't know if I could win. And then I found out I had a primary opponent, and that fear became even more real because I was like, I'm being primaried Democrats don't have primaries around here like normally. Like, I'm being primaried, one, because of my name recognition, and two, because I'm Hispanic. There's no other question about it. The guy was anti-gay. He was a white supremacist. Like, there was no reason to have this guy in the Democratic Party as an opponent for me in the primary. That wasn't like even a fair primary. Like, I just felt like there was no discussion of issues throughout the summer. It was just race and gender identity, sexual orientation. I got called I'm not man enough because I sleep with a man. Those were word for words. I had to block every single one of my opponents on social media just so I can concentrate, because they were starting to get to me. Like, I was emotionally becoming. And then they would call me, I forget what he used, the word he used, but he called me mentally unstable, I think it was. And then, of course, there was a huge backlash against him on social media and the community that basically said, this is not our values. We don't call people mentally unstable, even if they have some mental health issue. Like, we get
Like our
together.
current quote is maybe a candidate for this.
So there's no question. I mean, so that person, we've become friends since then, because my approach is, one, I had just talked to Andrew Yang that like week. And he kind of reinstilled the fire in me, saying, like, when they go low, you have to find a way to like conquer it with love and like civility, and like, this is how you're going to win. You got to show them that you're a good human being, that, yeah, I'm human like you guys. I get angry, I get upset, I get sad, I cry. Yeah, I actually suffer depression. So like, it's okay to be a human, but it is okay completely to show that you're better than them in the public hemisphere. And when he said that to me, it kind of like reignited my passion to prove people wrong, that like, you can be homeless and be something, that you can come from Puerto Rico from nothing and like just basically win and do great things. You could have a mother that has domestic violence and get her out of that situation. She now lives with me and she's very happy. She loves being a grandmother. So like, you can do all these things. There's no reason why you can't. And of course, it has to be a community effort. And I appreciate Andrew for like his friendship and just being there and saying, you got this. So I just when I wanted to quit, people came around me and they're like, no, you got this. Like, you have to believe in yourself. I know that it's tough. I know that guy's a bad guy. So what I did was, funny enough, his boss, and you guys might find the story interesting. His boss works in New York for a radio station, and she goes, this is not okay. I'm lesbian and I'm Puerto Rican, and I'm going to call him. And I have two options. I can fire him, or I can give him a way out of this. And I said, I'm all about second chances. Like, I don't want to cancel anybody. I believe that every human deserves redemption. So, including Donald Trump. And so, I know, controversial. So I said to her, sure, let's work on this. So she approached him and she said, you have two options. You can either talk to Carlos in person, get to know him, and to do a public apology, or you will lose your job for basically you're a public figure and this is how you're behaving. It's completely, that was a homophobic slander. That was an anti-immigrant slander, and that's not okay. And so he decided to call me. I gave her my number to call me, and we met for coffee at a local coffee shop that some presidential candidates would venture to. And we had a long talk. He got to know me. I felt his apology was sincere. I don't think it was because he was cornered, because some Donald Trump supporters, they're like, it's my way or no way. And they're okay with losing a job for the stupidity they do sometimes. And he took, so since then, we've actually met regularly once a week, socially distanced with a mask and all that. And we've gone for walks and talk, and I've learned about his family. He's learned about me. Funny enough, the day before my primary, he said, I hope you win tomorrow because I've had so much fun getting to know you, and like, you've made me a better human being. And I said, I hope for your sake I win, because I'm going to be the only one that can defeat you. And he laughed. And then I said, hey, while you're at it, would you like to hold signs for me tomorrow? And he said, why not? So he came. He was at a pole holding my sign. And I think that's what the America that I have come to know is. Like, we lift each other up, even if we're opponents in some intersection of life. But that said, he's still a Donald Trump supporter. He's still supporting the things that Donald Trump does. So what I've said to him is, I will always be civil, but I have no problem at all highlighting where you and I disagree, where you and I are different human beings. And I do believe that if you support Donald Trump, which, by the way, my partner voted for Donald Trump in 2016, he's a registered Republican. So that's an interesting story. But so to me, I said to him, so I have no problem standing my own and saying, this is where you or I can't meet halfway. There are things that it's okay for us as human beings to not compromise. And he understands that. And so I've done that in letters to the editor.
This is a very heartwarming story. Is he going to be your opponent? Did he get to win his primary?
Yep. He didn't have any primary.
Oh, I see.
So he's won, but he's not the opponent that I'm most worried about. I think I have shown that I'm a better candidate than him. I have shown that I can lead our city and unite our city. I still think he has a lot to grow as a human being and as a leader. I'm more worried about some of his other opponents. Well, some of his other colleagues that are running against me and in the same election as him. And that's like a guy named Greg, who is he's 2.0 Donald Trump for sure. And then there's a woman named Dawn Johnson. She's the Women for Trump, that clan that is showing up on social media everywhere. She fits the profile. Policy wise, attitude wise, I believe in having some sort of class when you're running, and when you're having dialogue with people, it has to be a two-way road, because I'm not right on everything. Just because I believe certain things about homelessness or whatever doesn't mean that I'm right. As a society, the majority gets to decide what it looks like. So I believe in having that discussion and being a consensus builder if we need to for the greater good of humanity and for peace. She doesn't believe that. She believes that it's whatever her way is. Everybody else is wrong. Everybody else is trashy. Everybody is less than human being than her. And so, that's the type of candidate that I'm running against. So I literally have to maneuver all of this policies, and then my attitude, my professionalism, my community building. We just hired some phenomenal staff. We have Sam Hayden, who's from the Yanggang, phenomenal. I don't know anybody else that worked harder than him in the state of New Hampshire for Andrew Yang. I really don't. When he told me on a call, I want to work for you, I was I didn't hesitate. I was come on. And of course, Andrew was very happy about that. And then I just picked up another guy named David Math. He was a political strategist for Tulsi Gabbard. This guy.
His last name is actually Math.
Yes, his last name is
Math.
actually. Well, his full name is. It's actually David Math Henfrich.
He's got to run for office. That name.
I've tried to encourage him, but he likes to be behind the scene. I actually try to encourage him to run for chairman of his local party, and he's like, maybe my girlfriend will do it. I was like, no, you're the mastermind. I want you to run. But his girlfriend is great, by the way. But yeah,
I'm sure he's very good at the role that he's chosen for himself too.
Oh, these people, I've been very fortunate. Then I have Sebastian Fuentes. So he's my political director, David. And then Sebastian Fuentes is my campaign manager. He is an immigrant rights activist. He is from Peru originally. He's done the mule, I call it the mule migration path, the drug cartels take. He's lived it. He knows exactly what discrimination looks like, what are the biggest problems with our country, our injustice that is happening with communities. And then I have one more position left, which later on today, I'll be interviewing a few more people. And I specifically had asked my campaign that I want a powerful woman to take that position. And I want to highlight with my team the diversity of our city. So Sam identifies as queer. We have Sebastian, who is immigrant and Latino. And then we have David Math, who is he's white, but he comes from the Native American culture, and he practiced Native American rituals. And he's very much like Tulsi 2.0, which I admire in many ways for her foreign policy. She just wants less involvement of invading other countries. And I think that's smart and that's good. And that's how we're going to fund some of these programs that we want to fund, is to slash these budgets, these giant budgets that we have with the military complex. So I have a
Carlos,
little bit of everything.
You had
Yeah.
mentioned your mom is enjoying being a grandma right now. Do
Yes.
you have any children of your own?
Yeah, I do. So I have baby Jack, who is 8 months old today. He was born January 11th of this year. And he is the most adorable baby. I've posted a few pictures on Twitter of him. Most
Like
recently, I think
adopted?
yesterday. Huh?
Or adopted kids?
No, so Jack is actually biological. And then I have Sophia, who is 5 years old. Her first day of kindergarten was Wednesday. And she's in school right now. She was adopted. But I've had both. She was with me since newborn. I got to see her born, and I've had her.
So you had a wife?
I don't have a wife. I have a partner. We're not married. It's a guy. I'm gay.
Yeah.
So the biological child we had as a surrogacy.
Oh, okay. Huh.
So she's basically at home helping you with the kids, so you can do all of this running for office. Now,
My mom
while
is
you're
the biggest blessing.
the running for office now, I read somewhere in all these different articles that you are running for a position that only pays like $100 a year or $100 a month. It's not
Yeah.
very much to live off of your this particular position. So how are you going to be able to do this position and still be financially okay for yourself?
Well, New Hampshire has one of the largest state houses in the country, has 400 members, one of the oldest still running in the country. And there are 46 people under the age of 40 who, like you and me, don't have, and I'm assuming at this point, but based on our conversation, I could probably safely say that none of us have very ultra wealthy parents that can, or spouses that can help us live.
I think you picked this right.
So, and there's nothing wrong with that. That said, I don't have that privilege. In 2010, well, the privilege I do have is in 2010, my partner and I opened a business. We currently have about 200 employees. The capital is in Concord, New Hampshire. My office happens to be in Concord, New Hampshire. So even though being a state rep is considered a part-time job, and it does pay only $100 a year, and you're serving for 2 years, so that's $200. Plus they pay you tolls and gas mileage, which obviously is not a lot to live. But I'll be able to work from the Concord office and balance both. There's a sacrifice to be made. I understand I'm not going to be living the most luxurious life. Most state representatives in the House do that. That said, the average age at the state house, and this is why it's so important to elect somebody like me, you guys tapped us on this earlier, is the oldest state house in the country. And when I say oldest, not just by years running, by age. The average age at the state house is 65. I would bring that age to probably 60. Like, that's how old it is. So
Do you think if they paid a living wage for the people who were serving, that they would be able to get younger people to volunteer to actually run?
So one of the bills that I'm proposing to do is, so Nebraska has a very interesting way because they don't have a large economy, and so does New Hampshire doesn't either. So how do you pay these politicians, so many of them, a living wage to serve its people without being a retired state house? So one of the things is you shrink the state house from 400 to maybe 50. That's solution number one. Also, there is no need for a Senate. And this is very controversial, but I've been talking to a lot of people on the ground about this idea that I have, which actually is not my idea. Tony LaBranch, who's a young guy running for office here in New Hampshire, who's very progressive. He's LGBTQ too. We talk a lot, and he shared this idea with me. He understands I have a larger platform. So I was like, oh yeah, I should talk about this more often and see how people feel. But the idea of eliminating the Senate makes sense federally. It does not make sense statewide. The Senate was created and intended to protect the little states. There's no protection for a state within a state. Like, you don't need to protect. If you're protecting a county, I get it. That's fine. But that's not even the role of the Senate. It's to protect who? The special interest. So there's no need for a Senate, really, or vice versa. We can keep the Senate, which is much smaller. It's only 15 senators, and then eliminate the state house. The only problem I have with that is having a Senate is very Roman. It's not very democratic. So to me, eliminating the Senate would make more sense than just keeping the state house, because that's more democratic. So, it's an idea that is not going to be easy to pass, but I want to start having that conversation. I'm not set 100% on what the solution is, but I know that something has to happen. Something has to change. Either we have to pay the bill and pay people a living wage to serve, or we need to downsize and the money that basically we were spending with other positions, just fill it in. But for now, I'm going to play the system, which is not getting paid a lot, and I'll work, basically having 2 jobs, which I'm not foreign to. I've worked 2 jobs most of my life. I'm a hard worker. I used to work at McDonald's and at a hospital as a kitchen aide. That was my first job, and I used to walk to my tent every single day. Had no car in the freezing cold. That's what I do. So
sometimes I think that's probably one of the most American things, is that to really make it, you have to work 2 jobs. It's crazy when the presidents, bring out their.
It's unfortunate. I mean, people should never have to. I want you to be able to put 100% of yourself into your real job, which is, government and leadership. The important thing, I don't want any of your energy being sapped by whatever you have to do to make money for some owner. Hold on, Ariel. Hold on. Have you ever considered crowdsourcing, crowdfunding? Start a Patreon for your government work. Be like, hi, I'm not paid enough for this good work I'm doing to help fix America. Perhaps I could have some patrons, that might be something for you. Have you ever considered that?
I haven't considered it, but the first thing that comes to mind, because I'm such a democratic democracy enforcer, I don't know what you call it, but I'm a big believer in democracy and the opportunity it's given me to lift my voice and lift the voices of homeless, that I can see where there might be some sort of conflict of interest, maybe. So I would explore that with some legal advice first before I would ever do something like that. That said, I was in AmeriCorps for 3 years. I know how to live. If you've ever seen an AmeriCorps person, they live on poverty. They don't get paid anything. So I know what it's like, and I'm prepared to serve people. Our soldiers are sacrificing their lives every single day. For me to sacrifice 2 years living on, barely any wages. That said, I do have a privilege that my partner owns the company, and he'll probably be making most of the money that year, those 2 years. So I'm comfortable with that. If that's what's going to take to move humanity forward, I'm completely fine. There's this idea that some reason we don't have to sacrifice something to gain something. I don't believe in that. I believe that we have to sacrifice something in order to gain something.
You're already sacrificing so much. I don't think it's good for you to be sacrificing. You're going to do a better job if it's your only job, right? You're representing me. I want you at 100%. I mean, I'm not in your state, but to some degree, the decisions you make affect me, affect every American a little more than an average American, right? You're in government. So I want you at 100%, man. I don't agree with this. I want people paying you, and I want your only job being the job that is very important that you do.
Well, it makes me very happy to hear that from you. That said, I want to touch on something you said, and this is a conversation Andrew Yang and I had, and I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this, but what happens with my race will dictate. New Hampshire underground and politics has so much ripple effect in the whole country. In Washington, D.C., I call New Hampshire the heart of Washington, D.C. So whatever happens with my race politically, I'm the last progressive standing, with big name recognition in the state. So whatever happens with my race will dictate whether Andrew Yang will have a strong showing in the future if he runs for president again. Will dictate whether Bernie Sanders, somebody like Bernie Sanders runs again. or runs for office, like has a chance. Like it will dictate whether we can do it at a state level, UBI, Medicare for all, Green New Deal version, like all these things. So like, I believe that literally what I'm doing is, I mean, the pressure is on and I feel it. I feel it every single day from the party, I have zero help. The party has already told me, like, you've already pissed off enough of us. So like, so to me, what I want more than anything is we need to focus on winning, and then we'll focus on the rest. You know, I'm Puerto Rican. We figure it out. We're going to like, we're hardcore. We're going to
Well,
figure it out, and I'll be fine.
Here's the irony in all of this. Like you have to work like 2 jobs if you get that, but Donald Trump, like, just yesterday said he just spent all this time just watching TV after show after show after show. It's like, what? We get angry for the people collecting unemployment, and we say when they're like job hunting, that's a requirement. And here's our president watching like 80 hours of Fox News a day and not doing much else.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's essentially what corporate America is doing. They're sitting at home, stressing whether they lost 1% or gained 1% that day or per hour. And that's it. And we're literally breaking our backs. I
Sounds pretty lazy to me.
I tell people we need to start thinking like Bug's Life, the movie. And you can tell I have kids because I'm bringing this up, but I watch it with my kids intentionally to instill in them that if enough little ants get together, the grasshopper, they need us. They won't survive. So that's how I see my movement, how I see this. I'm very grateful for all the support, all the people have come out of the nowhere and like believe that this race has a ripple effect on the rest of the country. And I know for a fact that I'm not going anywhere. So what happens in 2024 will very much be dictated based on my race, because I will be able to stand up in years to come. If I win this race, I'll have some say, and I'll be able to say, hey, I'm not okay with this. Like, this is not what people elected us to do. This is not democratic. This is not okay. And I want to play that equalizer. I want to be able to be that person that, just like I gave Andrew Yang a fair chance to, like, I welcome him into my home, into my city, into other communities. I want to be that person. I do believe that if it wasn't for people like me, I'm not the only one. There's other people like me in the state that actually welcomed Andrew Yang and gave him a spot, and we used our platform and our weight in the party to give him a leeway into the political system. He wouldn't be the person that he is today. And I always say, like, I knew him before he was cool. So to me, you know, we need to protect those people. We need to, that's why I formed the New Hampshire Progressive Coalition, is specifically to protect these progressives that speak up, that literally the establishment eats alive every single time, because they have no group, no coalition, no association to anybody to protect them, to make sure that there's a backlash if those people get attacked. That's why I believe, no matter if we disagree on some issues with AOC, like, we need to protect her, because otherwise the establishment is going to eat her alive. Ilhan Omar, all these people, not just leaders like nationally, you know, Andrew Yang, who he's done more for me than anybody else I know in international politics or national politics. Like, that's just amazing. So
Carlos,
stuff like that.
I know you've mentioned that you are a proponent of UBI. I didn't see it as part of your platform and in your list of issues for New Hampshire specifically. Is that because it doesn't really apply at the state level, that you're really more for it at a national level?
Honestly, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I was a one-man team, like, until primary day, when, like, I got all this help, all this financial help to be able to hire people and do things. My website was, like, literally created in one day by a volunteer. So it will be added UBI. I do believe that we can do it statewide. That I'm a huge proponent that you can do whatever you set your mind to do. And New Hampshire is a perfect place to do it. One, because it's cheaper to implement these policies. And two, because it's such a small state, it's a perfect way to kind of like international politics to intertwine it. And honestly, if I can successfully get enough people on board, which, you know, we have 600 members in the New Hampshire Progressive Coalition that I've built. We have about 40 of them running for office. if enough of us stand up and say, let's try something, it doesn't need to be 1,200. It could be something small and then grow from there. I know California was trying to do 500. I think we can actually accomplish it. I am not, and I'm not being cautiously optimistic. I'm confident that we can do it. We spent enough money on trash, on things that are not worth it. We subsidize fracking in the state of New Hampshire. We subsidize oil. Like, we don't need that. We don't need to subsidize either of them. They're economically sound. I get it back when we first started it, but it doesn't make sense to continue to do that.
Well, a subsidy is basically just UBI for the rich.
Oh, of course, 100%.
Yeah.
It's welfare for the rich, and that's
right.
why when people are like, "Oh, so and so's a communist for wanting to give money to people or this and that," I was like, "Well, we give away our money all the time. You and I are giving our taxpayers' money to corporations. They got tons of money this past spring, and we got 1,200. Like,
America's incredibly socialist.
Yeah, we're socialist in the wrong direction.
Yeah. So when
And also, Carlos, I was interested that you're saying AOC hasn't been eaten by the establishment yet, because I really think she has. She really doesn't support basic income anymore, thinking that it would somehow harm the very limited welfare system we have.
So I'm literally saying eaten alive, meaning she will completely disappeared as a progressive. She hasn't. And that means we still have a window to show. Politicians get eaten alive when they don't have enough support because they want to continue to do the work they do, for good or bad. And so they merge into whatever other group has more support, whoever has more power, whoever has a louder voice, because they want that support. Politicians thrive, whether you like it or not. They thrive when democracy is behind them. So I believe that AOC is still a progressive. I believe that we do have a chance to rescue whatever issues we've lost with her. I do see what you're seeing. She's agreed with Nancy Pelosi on a few things that I find disgusting. That said, she's still very much anti-war. She's still for Medicare for all, Green New Deal. So I think they've just been nibbling at her. And the establishment is very good at that. I mean, I was in that position not long ago. Like, I supported Hillary Clinton in 2016. Like, I didn't support Bernie Sanders. Like, I was very much a moderate. And so I don't want to paint myself as this guy that has always been enlightened, that has been like just phenomenal. I was very much that person because I wanted to accomplish things. I wanted the support. I wanted to have that network to be able to accomplish things. There's nothing worse than being a politician that does nothing. And I know quite a few of them here, and they feel pretty bad about themselves, that they're just a rubber stamp. They just feel useless. And I didn't want to be that politician. I wanted to be a leader that can get consensus and build something. And then I realized that I was like, well, it's okay to build things based on consensus, but there are times when you need to stand up when the rest of the country's wrong or the majority's wrong, and you have to say that's not okay. And that's when I started becoming more brave. And then I found people like you guys that started supporting me on social media, and I felt not afraid to stand up. And so courage is built. It's not born. And I know some people will disagree with me on that, but I truly believe courage is built. And so just like takes courage to get out of a situation, it's the same thing politically. So we need to start. Earlier, I don't know who mentioned this, but I think it was in one of your group chats. You guys said, this is what we need to do as a coalition, to build support. We need to be there for these politicians and do phone banking and do all this stuff. We have to do that. Otherwise, we're going to keep getting stuck with terrible politicians. And we need to learn when sometimes we just have to take the hit. And I've been able to do that. So that's why I built that coalition here in New Hampshire, because I want to protect these good people that are standing up. And the establishment just has a machine set up. I mean, it's just defeating, and as a human being, they learn how to defeat you psychologically. It's not always physically. They will make you feel like a piece of crap. And I've been in that position many times. I don't know how many times I've told myself I'm done with politics. And if I had done that, I don't know what the ripple effect would have been, but I can only contemplate that maybe I would have never helped Andrew Yang. Maybe I wouldn't be where I am today.
Well,
you just never know.
Of Carlo, creativity and understanding like their psychological attacks and understanding the way that they function so we can counter for it. It's like every intelligent like military strategist doesn't just blindly go into battle. It's like first you survey the area. You like, have satellite maps of like, okay, this is where this is what they have and this is what they're using and this is how they're using it. So you can prepare for that and like use your smarts. Because I find like sometimes with progressives, it's like maybe they get like a little too emotional and a little too rash, and it's like they just want to like blurt out like, oh, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that. But it's like, hang on a second, let's have like cooler heads over here and let's be really strategic and intelligent about this and beat them at their own game.
I need you on my team because I'm that emotional progressive where I just like, and that's why
I don't know.
have
You
the
seem
team I
pretty
have
smart.
to balance
You put a
me.
coalition together. I'd love to have
You
more of the
seem pretty
coalition
good.
on before you have to go. We got about 5 minutes left, but before you have to go, I would love to have anyone else from the coalition you put together on. This has been a very fascinating conversation.
Like,
so please extend that invitation to any of those people.
Yeah, I think you guys would very much enjoy. There's quite a few people I'm thinking right off the bat. So Robin Vogue, he's my graphics and data person, technology person, who you guys are going to start loving because he's going to start using some cool graphics. We're into comics, so you can already see what's in the future. He is a UBI proponent. He had run for state rep, but he lost his primary by 30 votes, keep in mind. He's part of the board for the New Hampshire Progressive Coalition. He would be somebody that you guys would enjoy. And he's younger than me, actually. So he's just awesome. Then this Sherry Frost, we call her the mother of all progressives in New Hampshire. That woman is on fire. Like she's a history teacher. Yeah, it's Sherry Frost. She is a history and / English professor. She's a state representative currently. She is the most progressive by like a long yard in the state house. She has challenged the status quo with me like since I started in politics. She's phenomenal. So I would say those two people alone, you guys, you might love them more than me actually. So I think you guys will like find their conversations very intriguing. When you were talking, Ariel, I think it was Ariel that brought it up. The conversation about being intelligent, basically, strategist. Right. These people are like, if I was going to war and I was like a general, I need them on my team. And so like, these are, and it's not about fighting harder. It's about fighting smarter. And so,
but I think this is the beauty of like the crossover appeal that we have with conservatives and the people who are Trump, because I was there because the Democrats really weren't offering anything. And I just thought that like Trump would do better for our economy. And as a millennial who like struggled with finding like a good quality job, I was like, maybe he knows how to fix this. But then when Yanks like I even and then I said, but wait a minute, we give all this free money to all the people who are not struggling, to all the people who screw things up, and we're saying that we can't give it to ourselves. And then it just clicked. And then like so if you're ever having if you're ever having trouble with like a conservative who says that socialism stuff, but then say, but wait a minute, what about the socialism that we already have that's working against us for the
I'll tell you how I connect with conservatives and libertarians here, which are most of my voters. We give Israel trillions of dollars to live a very comfortable life. People in Israel, they go on vacation, they own homes, they live a very good lifestyle. I'm not saying there's no poverty there, but thanks to our money, they live a very comfortable economy. Why would we do that for them and not for ourselves? Why can't we do that? We're supposed to be a village. We're supposed to take care of our people. Like, why can't we provide that for our own first? Like, I would take care of my family first and then take care of others. Like, that's how we were taught to, you take care of your own and then you take care of the stranger, so why can't we do that? Like, but I'm going to tell you
that plays very much into their America First mentality, I think. Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. I'm completely okay with that. We're paying taxes. You and I are working really hard. And this is where maybe me and Democrats differentiate. And I'm okay with that. Like, I want to be different. I don't want to be like a rubber stamp. But this is what changed me, because I want to finish it with UBI. I went on vacation right after I hosted Andrew, and he gave me the book, and he wrote me a really cool quote. Who would have known that actually his quote was going to be like, "Hero Carlos, congratulations on all you do for the community and for the world. I have learned so much about you, and we're building a future to be proud of together." Like, at the time, I didn't realize we were going to be building this much together, or that he would be supporting me for a race and like creating so much change together. But I took this book on vacation. I remember being on a cruise, and of course, on the cruise, you have a lot of downtime. My daughter was playing in daycare in the cruise, and I was like just lounging, and I had this book, and I was like, you know what, I might as well learn a little bit more about him. And I remember getting stuck with this section in his book, which is page 66, which, funny enough, my favorite number is 6 because I was born August 6th. But it says, it's worth considering whether humans are not actually best suited for many forms of work. Consider also the reverse. Are most forms of work ideal for humans? That is, if we're not good for work, is work good for us? So I immediately started thinking of a mule, a donkey, and how we would never use a mule, a donkey, or a horse for certain type of labor in the farm. And I was like, that's when it clicked on my head that I was like, oh my God, we humans have been trying to fit in. We're like, if we think of ourselves as a tool, like we're trying to fit in as a tool in places that don't fit. Like, it doesn't make sense. And that's when I realized, like, we've been looking at our society, at our world, the whole wrong way.
Right.
Yes.
We have not been thinking about what's best for us. Like, when you go to the doctor and the doctor says, what do you eat? Well, I have coffee in the morning, and they tell you, well, coffee's not, let's say that they say coffee's not good for you based on your health. You stop drinking coffee. You stop doing it. Like, oh, you can't live more than 20 pounds. Like, that's not good for you anymore. Like, you just stop doing it. And so society, our bodies, our lives, our life expectancy has been telling us, like, this is not good for you. These fumes, whatever you're working, like, it's not good for you. This is what you need to do, like work less hours or have a less stressful life because that leads to less cancer, like whatever it may be. But we're not listening. We're not doing any of that. And we just keep pushing ourselves. And so we keep having the same effect, which is insane. So that quote had the most effect on me. And I actually, after reading the book, and obviously I've had this book now for 2.5 years, I basically marked this page because I want to read it as much as often as possible to remind myself, like, every policy that I direct needs to be like a recipe for like what's better for humans, like what's better for us. What if we could have anything we want to live longer, to live happier, to live a more successful life, to live a more fulfilling life, what would that be? And I think COVID-19 did that for a lot of people, but for me, politically happened with the book. And that's when
I think that is a good way to connect with people who are of the America First sort of mentality, is that instead of putting all this patriotism into America, what is America? Why don't we talk about the human beings, right? Human beings first, I think, could be something that resonates very well with other with conservatives. Yeah.
I think that's how Carlos won his primary.
Yeah. He should keep going to that humanity first. Well, I mean, you did apologize for going to it too many times, but when we've been offered nothing but the stock market to assess the health of our nation, we need to offer some alternative. And humanity first, best one I can think of. So keep it up, man. That's what I think. I really agree with so much of the stuff you said. What a great conversation. It's 2:00. We're out of time. I don't want to hold you too long. But on the topic of working smarter, we have an SEO optimization bot. So I've got a small ask before you go. You can type !topic,
credit,
and then just the Twitter handles of all the people in the New Hampshire coalition Yeah.
And
But yeah, just type like New Hampshire Progressive Coalition on Twitter, and then all our Twitter handles. I'll be able to find them on Twitter. Anyone else who listens to this will be able to find them on Twitter once it goes on YouTube and Twitch and Spotify and stuff. So it'll be in the description for that. So if you could do that, that would be great. And thank you so much for coming on.
So
And,
before Carlos takes off, I want to invite everybody who's listening and Carlos to join us for Shill's Jackbox event tomorrow evening.
Oh yeah, 7 to 9 Eastern. Yeah, back on Twitch.
Have you heard of Jackbox?
I have not, but enlighten me.
Party games.
Well,
it's like Mad Libs, but different. Like there's a game where you get 2 rapping robots that like rap battle, and you have to finish their couplets for them. It's word games and stuff.
I would
It's
love
made
to.
by
So
the same
make sure
people.
you guys send me
I'll
like
send you
a
an
quick
invite to the link.
reminder.
Yeah, sure. Tomorrow,
Okay,
7 to 9
perfect.
on twitch.tv/yanggang Roundtable. So
I think Carlos, the thing that you
can play with us.
summarized is the best. It's like, who wants to be a mindless cog in a heartless machine?
Yeah, I agree. And I'm surprised that religion hasn't taught us this like from the beginning. But whatever. I mean, it took us Andrew Yang, I guess, to make us realize I'm fine with that. Whatever it takes us to this road, I'm okay with. So yeah, no, I appreciate everything you guys have done for me. I don't ever ask anything of any movement other than if you see something I post or check on me here and there, like it, retweet it. It goes a long way. You have no idea who is watching it, who is reading it. And it might be something that you're like, you know what, I haven't retweeted or liked anything Carlos posted in a long time. I don't connect 100% with it, but let me like it. Somebody else might need that message. Somebody else might be living in my city or might just moved here and like need to hear it. That neighbor that like literally came out of the nowhere. She's like, I just bought this house a couple of months back. We voted for you in the primary. We had heard about you, but I wanted to talk more before like general election. And we talked because she had heard about me through NH politics hashtag. So you just never know. And you guys, I want to like empower you guys. The Yang Gang is a force. It's a force. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. It's a powerful one. I know how many times during the primary cycle I went back and forth between whether I was going to endorse Bernie Sanders or Andrew Yang, like because of the influence you guys had, because you guys had so much knowledge and so much positivity too, which is helpful as a candidate. And I was like, I have so much to juggle. I have so many friends within the Yang Gang movement, and I kept going back and forth. And so what I tell people in politics is just keep trying. Don't ever give up on anybody because you have no idea what they're thinking. And that might be the case to endorsing that candidate. So it might be the case with you guys, with me, or Andrew Yang if he runs for president in the future, or whatever candidate you guys choose to in the future to support. Just keep going at it. You just don't know how close that person, even if they're telling you, no, I've made up my mind, you have no idea until that pen strikes that name on the ballot and fills the little bubble. Nothing is on stone. And I've changed my mind at elections before, like right in like the day of election. I like get a call from somebody and I'm like, they really get to me because I'm a human like anybody else. And I'm like, you know what? You're making a lot of sense. I'm going to support this person because like this makes total sense and you have the right message for me. Thank you. So
will you still be a write-in?
Yang Gang, I think the number one, besides Andrew Yang himself, of course, uniting all of us, but the most important thing I think you can say about the Yang Gang is Yang Gang shows up.
Yes.
That's it. We show up.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so, and I love some of my favorite Yang Gang, like Irene in California and Minnie Yang. Like, they're just, I think they're the coolest people on earth. Then Sam, of course, who I think very highly of in my campaign. And like, I'm so proud. Like, I feel like I struck gold by having him in my team. So, but thank you again. I don't want to take more of your time, but I'll happily join you guys anytime. Please mark on your calendars October 15th at 7 p.m. We're going to have some exciting stuff that I want like you all to be part of. And
in our group chat, remind people, and we will show up.
Awesome. Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you so much for everything. This is our victory.
We'll see you again. Yeah.
Sounds good. Bye-bye.
Carlos.
Have a good day, Carlos.
That was awesome. All right. Well,
That was a great.
Yeah.
To do sign
Great.
offs, you guys, or are we gonna not
That's the
skip the
thing,
audio
like-
sign
I
off?
like to do that once
Like
a
when
week.
when
now. Then
when
we'll save it
Carlos
for like tomorrow or something.
Well,
We're already at time. But yeah, Ariel.
so yeah. So I got him. How I got him on is that I saw that I couldn't message him on Twitter,
Mhm.
and then I just retweeted that he won, and I just tagged him in it and invited him to the show, and he said yes.
Nice.
So it's like,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
That's
So-
fantastic, man.
So I thought like, okay, he can't get the message, but maybe he'll get the notification that he was tagged in something. And I was
Yeah.
right.
Smart. See?
Well, I
Yeah, now we're gonna
stopped the
talk to rest of
stream
them.
for
All right,
Twitch,
I haven't stopped
just
mine
to let
yet.
you
I'm
know.
just getting Greg leave, and then all right. Well, goodbye, everybody. See you tomorrow.